What if 12 garage-built drones could erase an entire Russian operation in under 6 minutes? At 6:17 a.m., over the calm waters of Crimea, silence became a weapon. No missiles, no pilots, just invisible machines guided by mathematics and revenge. Within 40 seconds, a naval base disappeared beneath smoke and seawater. Minutes later, an airfield erupted into fireballs that lit the horizon like a second sunrise. This was not a random attack. It was a synchronized act of digital warfare. Crafted in basements and launched from the sea today, we'll uncover how Ukraine's Ghost Swarm, costing less than a single missile, outsmarted Russia's million-dollar defenses, hacked its radar, and rewrote the rules of modern combat. If you were the commander that morning, would you have seen it coming before the sky turned orange? Stay tuned, because what happened next changed the Black Sea forever. At 6:17 a.m., the first explosion ripped through Sevastopol harbor. A blinding flash of white light swallowed the pier as a Ukrainian drone slammed into the PD 2039 tugboat, turning its steel hull into a fountain of fire and seawater. Seconds later, 3 more drones burst through the fog, diving at 140 kilometers per hour, each guided by inertial navigation, each carrying 3 kilograms of shaped explosives ready to tear into their targets. The Pantsir S, 1 missile battery nearby locked on, but didn't shoot. The radar operator stared in disbelief as the screen showed false targets. The software refused to track anything slower than 12 meters per second. The drones were simply too slow to exist. And in that algorithmic blind spot, Ukraine struck with surgical precision. The second drone pierced the tugboat's starboard flank, forcing in 35,000 gallons of seawater per minute. The third swept low over the pier, igniting a barge loaded with 12 tons of aviation fuel. The fourth dove vertically, punching through the bridge deck and detonating inside the control room. The blast reached 3,000 degrees Celsius, melting through glass, steel, and human instinct alike. By 6:18, the harbor was chaos. Sirens, smoke, and the smell of burning oil. Divers from the PDSS Special Forces ran for cover as millions of dollars in underwater gear slid into the black water below. In less than 40 seconds, the entire Black Sea Fleet's diving division ceased to exist. And this was only the opening act. If you were standing on that pier, watching the sea itself explode, would you have understood that 12 more drones were already in the sky, closing in fast? 4 minutes after the harbor strike, 6 Ukrainian drones roared inland toward Gvardiskoy Airbase. They flew barely 3 meters above the highway, weaving through morning traffic like metallic shadows. Every truck, billboard, and power line masked their radar signature. To Russian sensors, the drones had vanished. Nothing but background noise in the static inside the base. Crews were performing routine checks on 2 helicopters, a Mi-24 attack gunship and a Mi-8 transport, both fueled and armed for a covert insertion near Kherson. The air defense crew of the Tor M2 system scanned the sky, unaware they were staring straight through death. The Tor's radar cycles every 4 seconds, first high, then medium, then low. In that moment, the beam swept upward, leaving a 4-second blind zone near the ground. At 6:21 and 14 seconds, the drones darted across the open perimeter. In those 4 seconds, they covered 420 meters, invisible and unstoppable. By the time the radar beam came back down, they were already under the hangars, too close to lock on. The Tor operators saw nothing but noise. Soldiers rushed outside with eagles launchers, but sunlight, 2.2 million candelas blazing from the east, blinded every infrared seeker. 2 missiles fired wildly and exploded in empty air. Then came the impact. The first drone struck the Mi-24's cockpit canopy, its copper liner melting through armor like butter. The second slammed into the Mi-8's auxiliary fuel tank, releasing 500 liters of burning JP-8 across the tarmac. A third hit the maintenance bay, detonating near 20 ammo crates. The shockwave shattered windows half a kilometer away. By 0628, the airbase was burning. smoke columns rising 600 meters high. The radar feed went black. If you were the commander inside that control tower, watching both your harbor and your helicopters disappear in the same 6 minutes, what would you do next? Stay with me. What happened before those strikes is even more unbelievable. 17 minutes earlier, the Black Sea was calm, almost unnaturally so. 3 Ukrainian unmanned surface vessels drifted silently 40 kilometers off the Crimean coast, their electric engines humming below the radar threshold. Each vessel carried 4 waterproof launch tubes, housing drones built from carbon composites and off-the-shelf chips. They cost less than $30,000 apiece, yet could destroy assets worth hundreds of millions. On the Russian side, the Raptor 041 patrol boat was making its routine circuit near Cape Canaveses. Its thermal camera picked up 3 faint heat signatures racing toward the shoreline. Unidentified, fast, low. The commander hesitated for just 1 second before ordering his gunner to fire. A burst of 14.5mm armor-piercing rounds tore into the pre-dawn haze, glowing like tracer comets over the black water. The Ukrainian USVs pushed to 36 knots, but the Raptor accelerated to 49, closing fast. At 2.1 meters depth, the patrol boat's depth finder screamed, "Volcanic rock ahead." The captain throttled back to avoid ripping his hull open. That hesitation saved the Ukrainians. At 1,800 meters distance, the USVs initiated emergency drone launch. Their decks split open like mechanical jaws, and 12 drones shot skyward at 55 meters per second, each stabilizing mid-air before climbing into formation. Geometry and timing had just outsmarted a $1 million warship. The Raptor's gunner tried to elevate his mount, but the drones were already above 70 degrees, beyond reach. Within seconds, they vanished into the clouds, leaving only the echo of their engines and a trail of salt spray below. The countdown to destruction had officially begun. When the 12 Ukrainian drones vanished from radar, the Russian command center in Sevastopol assumed they'd crashed. But 5 seconds later, warning alarms erupted across the Tarkin Cup Peninsula. The Russians had activated their Roman BN electronic warfare array, a 420-kilowatt jammer stretching across 10 square kilometers of coastline. It flooded the airwaves with white noise so powerful it overwhelmed GPS, radio, and even shortwave frequencies used by civilian vessels. The jammer's range was nearly 60 kilometers, enough to blind every satellite-guided weapon over Crimea. GPS readings flickered, showing the drones drifting 15 kilometers off their true position straight into open water. For most systems, that would have been the end. But not these. Each drone carried a backup inertial navigation core, a cluster of gyroscopes spinning at 20,000 revolutions per minute. The AI took control in silence. Without GPS or radio, it calculated direction by the subtlest data air pressure, micro vibrations, and motor torque. Each drone adjusted its heading by less than 0.2 degrees per second, staying perfectly aligned in formation. Meanwhile, the 2 high-altitude relay drones at 2,400 meters acted as airborne bridges, passing encrypted signals through narrow gaps in the jamming field. Their transmissions were faint, barely 0.05 watts, but enough to keep the swarm united. From the ground, radar operators saw only static. From above, the sky looked empty. Yet 12 machines were carving invisible paths across the spectrum, threading through an electronic storm that should have erased them from existence. The strike had gone dark, but it was far from over. At 6:19 a.m., the swarm divided. The onboard AI executed its split sequence with mathematical precision. Group Alpha 6 drones pivoted south toward Gvardiskoy Airbase, 34 kilometers inland. Group Bravo, 4 drones descended toward Silvestol Harbor, where Russian divers were still preparing their morning operations. The remaining 2 drones climbed higher, stabilizing at 2,500 meters, serving as relays to maintain data links in the electromagnetic chaos below. Every microsecond was calculated. Altitude, speed, battery life, wind resistance, fed into an algorithm running 120,000 operations per second. Each course correction consumed a fraction of a watt. Yet the margin for error was microscopic, less than 1.3 meters. The drones carried 1.2 kilograms of AI-optimized explosives, encased in lightweight titanium shells, small enough to evade radar, powerful enough to pierce armor plating. By 6:20, both attack groups synchronized timers to the millisecond. The mission rule was absolute, simultaneous impact. If the harbor strike came even 10 seconds early, the airfield's defenses would be alerted. If the airbase hit first, naval personnel could shut down the pier and protect their divers. Timing was the weapon. The drones flew at 140 kilometers per hour, skimming under power lines carrying 115,000 volts, using the electromagnetic hum to mask their electric signatures. Each unit's AI recognized environmental interference as camouflage, turning noise into invisibility. As the sun rose behind the peninsula, golden light refracted through the morning haze, cloaking the swarm in shimmering anonymity. Russian radar operators watched clean screens and calm skies, unaware that two converging lines of code and metal were now locked onto their coordinates. At 6:21, the countdown to impact reached 0. The strike was imminent, the algorithm complete, and the Black Sea front was about to change forever. By 6:28 a.m., both targets were burning. From orbit, thermal satellites recorded two distinct fire signatures, one inland, one on the coast, each exceeding 1,200 degrees Celsius. At Gvardiskoye Air Base, the Mi-24 gunship was reduced to a molten frame, its 30mm cannon detonating one belt at a time like fireworks over the tarmac. Beside it, the Mi-8 transport lay split in half, its fuel reservoirs feeding a continuous blaze that consumed the maintenance hangar and 20 parked vehicles. The fire spread across 1.6 hectares, forcing crews to abandon the base entirely. Down at Silvestol Harbor, the once proud PD-2039 tugboat had vanished beneath the surface, leaving only an oil slick and floating wreckage. Cranes twisted under the heat. Oxygen tanks burst underwater like depth charges. Divers from the PDSS unit, responsible for Russia's covert underwater sabotage missions, stood powerless as 3,000 kilograms of specialized gear underwater thrusters, demolition packs, encrypted transmitters sank into the harbor mud. The Black Sea's most elite diving division was erased in less than 1 minute. In total, $38 million in Russian assets were neutralized. A fleet, a base, and an entire mission chain wiped out by drones that cost less than the tires on a single helicopter. The lesson was brutal but undeniable. Precision, timing, and algorithms now outweighed armor and steel. As the smoke drifted over the Crimean horizon, the silence that followed was not peace, it was recalibration. For the first time, Russia's defenses realized that the battlefield itself had learned how to think. By the time the smoke cleared over Crimea, the numbers told a story that no propaganda could hide. 2 destroyed helicopters, 1 sunken support vessel, over $38 million in losses, all caused by a handful of drones that together cost less than a single Russian missile. But the real damage wasn't financial. It was psychological. For the first time, Russia's Black Sea defenses had been beaten not by power, but by precision. Algorithms outmaneuvered armor. Noise defeated radar. Cheap, silent, expendable machines exposed a truth. Every modern army now fears that intelligence, not firepower, rules the future of war. Satellite footage later showed the harbor glowing with residual heat long after sunrise. The flames had died, but the message had not. Even the most expensive weapons are useless if they can't see what's coming. Ukraine's Ghost Swarm didn't just strike a target. It shattered the myth of invincibility that once surrounded Russian systems like the Tor M2 and Pantsir S1. And somewhere inside every military command room tonight, analysts are rerunning this battle frame by frame, asking the same question. What happens when thinking machines learn how to fight? If you were in their place, would you bet on armor or intelligence? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe precision will always defeat power, Make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video because this war of algorithms has only just begun.